Welcome in. It is the North Side Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Widmeyer, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs. It has been a few weeks, but as Jason and I promised, anytime there was Chicago Cubs breaking news, we would hop on, get a podcast out for you guys. Sometimes it'll be a live stream. This version is, of course, a pre-recorded podcast that will punch out and get out to the masses. I know there was a live stream earlier today with Brock, and I believe True Blood was on it, kind of covering the trade, which, of course, Jason and I are going to cover as the Cubs, per multiple reports, are acquiring Edward Cabrera.
Oh, it's official. We're officially official. Yes, it is officially official. We have all of the return. We are ready here.
So the Cubs acquire Edward Cabrera from the Marlins. They had been flirting with the Marlins pitchers in general, dating back to Luzardo last offseason, and Sandy Alcantara was a name that was whispered about, where there were like little ties to the Cubs. Edward Cabrera had been a name that we had heard in a couple of circles. Yeah,
Cabrera over the over the summer in July, I guess, and we'll talk about it here a little bit. But it sounds like the ask back then was Caissie and Wiggins.
Yeah, and so the Cubs do give up Caissie. They do not give up Wiggins. So one of those two going back to the Marlins. We'll cover what the Cubs gave up. I'm going to have give the floor to you, Jason, just to tell Cubs fans what exactly they are getting with Edward Cabrera. You can sort of run with that however you want. Talk about his stuff, his pitch mix, what he does well, maybe some areas the Cubs want to tinker with to help him improve, where he slots into the rotation. Floor is yours. What are the Cubs getting in Edward Cabrera, the flamethrower from the Marlins?
So let's just say this. All right. Major League fastball average right-handed pitcher. This is where I'm going to start it off, because I think this is probably where people want to kind of hear. And this is kind of a fun jumping off point. It sits about 94.5 miles an hour, give or take. It might be 94.3, 94.6 each year, kind of been sitting there. Edward Cabrera's changeup averages 94 miles an hour. So if you want to know what we're getting, I think that's the most eye-popping stat that I can give you when we talk about what we're getting. We're getting a fastball that sits 98 miles an hour on average. He will hit 100 miles an hour. And I'm going to be honest with you, his fastball's not even that good of a pitch. The real special here is, one, the 94 mile an hour changeup that is just disgusting. But even beyond that, his curveball is one of the 5 best whiff pitches in baseball. In terms of percentage, he got a whiff over 46% of the time on that pitch last year. I got real excited about Tatsuya Imai. Obviously, that didn't happen. Lots of things went down there. But to kind of put this into a little bit of a kind of context on how good Edward Cabrera's curveball was last year, Imai got about 45% whiff on his reverse slider in Japan with a smaller baseball against much worse hitters. Edward Cabrera did that against the best hitters on the planet with his curveball. And it's not like a weird shape pitch. It's like considered one of the best shapes in the game. This thing is nasty. This thing is gross. So kind of talk a little bit about what Cabrera is, what he's been, and what he might be. Edward Cabrera was a former top 100 prospect with the Marlins. He got a lot of love early on in his career. And then from like 2021 to 2024, he spent a time injured. He bounced around. He'd be up at the major leagues for a little bit. He'd go back down to the minor leagues for a little bit. And you can see that in a lot of these years, like 2024, he had 6 starts in the minors, 20 in the majors, 111 innings between the two. Year prior to that, 71 innings in the minors, 71 in the majors, 28.1 in the minors. So kind of bouncing around. And one of the big knocks on him was his control just wasn't very good. He walked a lot of guys. Last year, Miami is under some new management here the last couple of years. Pete Bendix came over from the Tampa Bay Rays organization and has been running the Marlins. Real smart guy. They're a good pitching organization right now, and they started to tinker with Edward Cabrera. And one of the big things that they did is they lowered his arm slot. They lowered it a lot. From like a mid 40s guy. So kind of like, what we would consider to be kind of average in terms of like where he was, down to about a 36-degree arm slot. This isn't like Tatsuya Imai, like super low stuff, but it's also much lower than it was. And this created some really good things for him. One, it gave him some nasty horizontal movement on that 94-mile-an-hour changeup that he has. Two, it created this disgusting vertical depth, this vertical movement that he has on this curveball. It was a good curveball. It went to absolutely elite last year. This is like I'm not going to give it an 80 grade generational pitch or anything like that, but this is like 70 grade pitch. This is top of the league type of a pitch that he's got with this curveball right now from this arm slot. It's gross. It is so good. So they also worked on adding a sinker and a slider. So sinkers and sliders attack same-sided hitters. So Cabrera righty, it's much better against righties. Completely limited the use of the 98-mile-an-hour fastball, and then use that changeup and curveball. So he uses the changeup against lefties. He uses against righties. It's that slider sinker combination, curveball to everybody. Moving forward, like where can we see some increase and some fixes? One, I think he's ripe for a cutter. Get this guy a cutter. I think getting him a cut fastball with his low arm slot to attack lefties inside as well as outside, I think would be great. He throws the sinker a lot to lefties. I think the 25% of the time, 26% of the time no, sorry, wrong thing. 18% of the time, almost as much as he does against righties. And I don't think that's the game for him. I don't think that the game for Edward Cabrera is sinkers against lefties, because righties shouldn't be throwing sinkers against lefties anyways. Get this guy a cutter, drive it in on the hands, and then use that changeup out against him. Almost kind of like a Cade Horton type of a thing. If you think that you can get this guy a cutter, which if he can throw a slider, and he's throwing a pretty good slider, then yeah, dump that in there. See if you can get a little bit of extra motion on there. The other thing that people are going to talk about, I know people are going to be concerned about, is the injury concerns. This is a guy who has had a checkered injury past. And I think when we talk any pitcher is one throw away from blowing out his elbow and missing a year and change. And Edward Cabrera is a pitcher, and I think it was somebody on Northside. I can't remember if it was Rob or Outshined or one of our awesome posters out there. They said there's basically two types of pitchers. There's guys who have had Tommy John, and there are pitchers who haven't had Tommy John yet. Edward Cabrera definitely feels like he's somebody who could have Tommy John down the road. He missed he had 2 stints on the IL last year for elbow related injuries. And I know that's a big red flag. People are going to hear that and they're going to jump off the cliff right off the bat, but I'm going to pull you back a little bit. With his arm slot reduction, so coming from a more overhand to a more sidearm, that changes the stress. So when you come overhand, that stress is in the shoulder area. When you drop that arm slot, the stress goes to the elbow. So I know people are gonna jump on that elbow, being like, "Well, that's Tommy John. His elbow is gonna blow out right away." And yeah, it might, but on the flip side, that sore elbow could just be him getting used to new mechanics. The stress load has changed. He's got to build up those muscles a little bit differently in that area. He's a professional, but that doesn't mean that he just is immediately good at those kinds of things. So I think the Cubs are getting somebody with true top of the rotation potential, with real risk of he might miss one of these 3 years. The Cubs are acquiring him for 3 years. They have him for 3 years before he is a free agent. So they will have him in 2026. They'll have him in 2027. They'll have him in 2028. That's 3 years. He could blow out his arm in one of those years, and that's a part of it. And I think that part is when we talk about the return, that's reflected in there. But at the same time, you're pairing Edward Cabrera up with Cade Horton and potentially Jackson Wiggins mid-season as 3 guys who can easily hit 98 to 100 miles an hour from the right side, have big wipeout stuff. And, very quickly, the Cubs have gone from a rotation and a pitching staff that was like, well, it's like they got Kyle Hendricks and Shota Imanaga and like these guys throwing like 90 miles an hour, and to like, I mean, this could be like the power trio in baseball as soon as next year. If Jackson Wiggins works out, he's not in the trade, so he's going to stay. I'm sure the plan for Wiggins is something according, like that Cade Horton last year was. So like there's a real chance that we're looking at this in 2027 going into the season, and we're saying the Cubs have 3 guys at the top of their rotation that are nasty from the right side. They're throwing heat, and that's something we haven't been able to say in a long time. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how does his swing and miss stuff fit into a rotation that I think has lacked that in recent years, like some true swing and miss stuff?
Yes.
I'll let you speak to it, Jason. You're more, in tune with it than I am when it comes to the profile for Edward Cabrera. But just when I was looking at some of his stuff and how it could be really a perfect fit for a rotation that has needed someone with that type of arsenal or that type of trait, right? Because the Cubs have had some pretty damn good starting pitchers, but when you talk about swing and miss stuff, I feel like that, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you have a different opinion, but I feel like that's been lacking in the rotation the last few years. It hasn't been invisible, but it's been lacking. Cabrera certainly brings that to the table.
Yeah, he's going to be an above-average swing and miss guy. Strikeout rate from starting pitchers last year was 22.8%. He was well over 25. He's been over 25 most of his career. One thing that I'll give everybody a little bit of a pause here on. You might be worried that with the arm slot, he kind of lost some of his strikeout stuff. And if you're doing that, what you're doing is you're jumping immediately to his K9 rate. And that is how many strikeouts he has per 9 innings. That's not the number that we should really be looking at. What we want to be looking at is strikeout percent, K percent. And here's why. Edward Cabrera is a perfect example of it. Strikeouts per 9 is based on how many, also is based on how many hitters that you've kind of just like face per 9. It's not on your total percentage of hitters. And Edward Cabrera is a great example of this. High walk players will have higher K9s than they will K percentages because they're walking guys pretty consistently. So they're facing more hitters, walking more, striking out less of a percent of them, if that makes sense. So if we look at Edward Cabrera and you jump to his page, you might go to his Fangraphs page and be like, well, it's kind of weird. His K9 was like over 10 in 2023 and 2024. It kind of dipped a little bit in 2025. Did he lose any strikeout percentage? Did he lose strikeout ability with the drop? And here's how we can kind of explain that in a really easy way, or you can see it in the stats. So in 2024 and in 2024 specifically, he struck out 10 hitters per 9 innings, but he also walked a lot of players. He walked 12% of the hitters he faced. Ooh. In 2025, his K9 is 9.81. So you would think, well, I kind of didn't strike as many guys out. But that's why we use K percent, because in 2024, he walked 12% of his hitters. So in 2025, he only walked 8% of his hitters. So he actually faced less hitters. That gives him a chance to strike out less total human beings. But if you're not walking hitters and you're still striking guys out, it doesn't matter because his K percentage is basically virtually the same. His K percentage actually went up a few points. It went up from 25.6 to 25.8. So I think he's a great example of that. These are small numbers, but this can happen with high walk guys who stop walking people. And Edward Cabrera stopped walking people last year. He went from a well above average walk person to kind of an average walk guy with well above average strikeout percent. I think he's going to fit great into the rotation if and when he's healthy. The hope here is that we can get 140 to 160 innings of him. But this is a playoff starter. This is a guy that you could legitimately have start at the first game of a playoff and kind of go against anybody. He's got the stuff to outduel anybody in the league. If he stays healthy with a couple of tweaks, I think the Cubs got a really, really, really good arm and we'll talk about it in a little bit, for a really reasonable price.
Where does he fit into the rotation? I would say the floor is like as your number 3. I think he could be a number 2. Is that fair to say?
I think if you looked at the Cubs right now and we kind of like see the rotation that comes out next year, my guess is that Matthew Boyd's going to be your opening day starter. I think the Cubs are going to trust him a little bit more than everybody else. They know him. He was great last year. I think behind him is going to be the Cabrera and Horton 2-3. I think they're probably our best pitchers. Realistically, our highest ceilings next year are Cabrera and Horton. I think the Cubs will give opening day nod to Matthew Boyd as kind of a tip of the hat, a career type of a thing. Edward Cabrera is new on the team. He hasn't earned it type of a thing. Cade Horton's coming off of his rookie season. He probably hasn't earned it kind of a thing. Matthew Boyd, you've been here. You were here last year. You've been in the league. Tip of the hat type of a thing. How good he is, like, I think he's got the stuff to be like a traditional number one type of a starter. His workload is always going to be kind of the question. If you can get him to 160 innings, I think you've got a really, really, really good starting pitcher here. Somebody who you look back on and at the end of the season is a top 20 guy. I think in terms of like rate metrics, this is a top 20 starting pitcher in baseball. He could be better than that. He could be a top 10 starting pitcher in baseball. Like, I think the ceiling on that is that high. When you have a curveball this good, when you have the fastball with the velocity that he has, there's some work to be done. He's not there yet. There's obviously health. It's going to play a factor in there as well. But I mean, like, sky's the ceiling with Edward Cabrera type of a thing.
Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Widmeyer. Talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. Obviously, the focus for this podcast is the trade of Edward Cabrera. How happy, how giddy do you think Tyler Zombro is with this move that's been made?
Edward Cabrera. This is like a this is a Zombro special.
Okay.
Zombro loves low arm slots, and you can kind of go back and look at a lot of the pitchers that the Cubs have acquired in the offseason. You can look at their low end pickups that they have, guys like Colin Snyder. He's a low arm slot guy. They paid multiple years for a reliever this year. It was Phil Maton. What is he? Super low arm slot guy. They went and they brought in Hobie Milner, who has had experience with Craig Counsell, but also super low arm angle guy. Low arm slots kind of go with the Zombro school, and we can got to prove that because Colin Snyder was somebody who's worked with Tread Athletics for years. And he's a low arm slot guy. So I think when we talk low arm slots, I think that's a hallmark of a Zombro. That doesn't mean everybody has to have a low arm slot because you can't pigeonhole yourself into one specific thing. But we can start to find things that the Cubs prefer, and lower arm slots are one of them. Pronators are another. People with horizontal movement is somebody that the Cubs usually like. So I think Edward Cabrera is going to be right at home in this organization in terms of what they like to do. I also don't think that the Cubs would have traded for him if they weren't. I mean, they've been interested in him since basically going back to last summer. And you know, you might want to point out that, like, you know, they were trying to trade for, it was Luzardo at the start of last year. Well, what does Luzardo do? He's got a 32-degree arm angle. At that time, Edward Cabrera was still well over 40. Like, they hadn't shown off his low arm angle yet. He shows off the low arm angle. All of a sudden, Cubs are sniffing around left and right on him. So I think the Cubs are going to be really excited to get this guy into the system and to have him work with the biometrics team to keep this guy healthy. The Cubs have done a pretty good job of keeping arms healthy over the years. I know Justin Steele went down last year, but they've done a good job with that. So, and stuff-wise, I just think that the Cubs are going to be jazzed about getting a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, 94-mile-an-hour changeup, and this guy's curveball.
That is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Widmeyer, Northside Baseball Podcast. Now the package that goes back to the Marlins. It is headlined by Owen Caissie. And you said, or you had hinted at just a couple minutes ago, that you thought what the Marlins are getting back, that, you know, the Cubs, you kind of made it sound like I'm slightly paraphrasing, that the Cubs made out well with this trade. For the fans who are going to be very upset, because, you know, there's going to be some that, not that they got Cabrera, but that they gave up Caissie. What would you say to those people? Because I think obviously there's still a lot of unknown with Owen Caissie. Obviously, he's top prospect. We saw him up for a little bit last year in that second half of the season for the Cubs. What would you say to those who, because I'll just say, scrolling through social media, I have seen some Cubs fans who are like in shock that Owen Caissie was part of this return package, and others that had mentioned if you're going to trade for Owen Caissie, you need to get a better pitcher than Edward Cabrera. So how do you try to sort of lessen the blow that some fans are feeling from that perspective?
I'd start off with this and say that nobody out there is a bigger Owen Caissie fan than I am. Like, none of you. Nobody. You might like Owen Caissie. I have been, and this is, I take my losses when I take my losses. And I've told you many times on this podcast the things that I was wrong on. The one thing that I can definitely tell you I was right on is back in COVID 2020 during that draft, I was banging the drum for the Cubs to draft this 6'6" outfielder from Canada named Owen Caissie in the second round. I was harping on it left and right. If you were somebody who's been with me since my Pro Sports Daily days, like, I was there. This was a guy I loved in the second round, and the Cubs didn't take him. When the Cubs were rumored to be trading Yu Darvish to the San Diego Padres, the organization that did take him, all I did the entire time was say, scream from the mountaintops, this should be a part of their package. Not only was it a part of their package, it was the best prospect that they got in that deal. Then, in my opinion, and now, and I've been a big Owen Caissie fan since then. He coming into this offseason, once some of these guys graduated, I would have told you that Owen Caissie was the number one prospect in the system. So I want to put that out on blast. I am coming to you with this sentiment from being Owen Caissie number one fan. Owen Caissie has had strikeout issues dating back to his lower levels. They got better last year, but he also has 1,000 plate appearances at AAA. He's young for the year, he's young for the group and that he was playing against, but like, there also comes a point when you get too many plate appearances at a minor league level, it starts to get cloudy on what is progress and what is you figured out the level. The amount of pitching that we also know is skipping AAA right now is significant. Cade Horton basically ignored it. Chase Burns, another top prospect, basically ignored it. I mean, these are guys who got 30 or 40 innings at these levels. Your best pitchers, they're saving their bullets and they're throwing them to major league levels. So Owen Caissie hasn't seen this kind of stuff yet. There's been some data out there that he didn't do great against high velocity fastballs as the league moves more and more towards velocity. Edward Cabrera, this is an issue that you want to pay attention to. And beyond that, he's not a high pull hitter. And when, he's got great batted ball data. I don't know if it's elite. It's really good. But he doesn't pull the ball a lot. He's never pulled the ball a lot. And he's not going to be a great defensive player. I think he's capable defensively. I think he gets a bad rap that he's DH only. I don't think so. I think he's more than athletic to handle right field for the next 3 to 5 years. He has a 60 grade arm. But almost it doesn't matter how good of a DH he is if you're getting the starting pitcher back for 3 years. Like this is kind of low. It's kind of a low price to pay for what they got in that. And now part of that is because Edward Cabrera is an injury ticking time bomb. It feels like probably more so than others. It's reflected in there. And you can see that in the second and the third pieces that they gave up. Second piece is Christian Hernandez, who, that many years ago was baby A-Rod, but isn't now. He's a good prospect. I don't want to take it away from him. He's a good prospect. He's probably undervalued. But he's an iffy prospect as of right now. A pretty good defensive shortstop who hasn't shown really a lot of power or barrel feel. He can steal some bases. I'm not quite certain he's going to be anything more than a fringe major leaguer down the road. And then they gave up Edgardo De Leon, who's a first base prospect third base prospect who played as an 18-year-old in the complex league and struck out almost 30% of the time. So, he's a good lottery ticket. I don't want to take that away from him. I mean, he's a good lottery ticket, but at the same time, like we're not talking about like a return of Caissie and Wiggins. That would have hurt. The second and the third pieces are guys that I'm not entirely certain are like ever going to be top 200 prospects in baseball. Like they really didn't give up that much. I know Jarrett Seidler of Baseball America said that he didn't even want to rank Caissie in his top 100. I would have had him well in my top 100. I think he's a good player, but I mean, like the upper end of Caissie is hard to get there on, and maybe he does. And he's Kyle Stowers, who was a good player this year, but there's like another version of him that just never hits enough and is never a defensive player. He's not going to help you on the bases. So you kind of gave up a risky prospect and some lottery tickets for like a risky pitcher, but one that we've seen have success against the major leagues. I think if you're complaining that this is what they got, then you want your cake and need to eat it too. You want to have all of your prospects and to get good players, and that's just not how it works. You have to give up something to get something. The Cubs kept Moises Ballesteros. They kept Jackson Wiggins. They kept Jefferson Rojas. There are worse trades to happen. I think the Cubs are going to be fine. And remind everybody that their first round draft pick was Ethan Conrad, who's an outfielder too. So it's not like this system is like completely empty. Their second round draft pick was Kane Kepley, also an outfielder. I think their system wise outfield, they're going to be fine. Immediately, they're going to be fine. They got a great pitcher. I wouldn't complain about this if I were you.
All right, I think maybe one thing for sure, maybe two more to hit on. Again, the Cubs trade for Edward Cabrera. Owen Caissie is the main name going back to the to Miami, to the Marlins in the trade for Cabrera. So the Cubs get a guy who will slot in the top part of the rotation for sure, team control for 3 more years, affordable team control, that's for sure. I'll ask you this now, Jason. I think this is kind of the last domino within all of this is, okay, the Cubs have now made I would say a sizable splash. That's a really good name to get. Bolsters up your rotation tremendously, and now we're kind of flirting around with the idea of, hey, you have Cade Horton, you have Cabrera, Boyd's still there, Taillon's still there. You're going to get Justin Steele back at some point. But can't forget about Jackson Wiggins. Like, there's a lot of names to float through. Shota Imanaga obviously still there in Chicago too as part of the rotation. But what now for the Cubs in the offseason? Does this now mean, hey, let's go get a bat? And do you think the Cubs will be proactive in that approach, or do you think there's a chance that this is the trade? Now they're like, hey, we made our big move and now we're going to kind of kick our feet up, or do you see them going out and attacking a little bit more?
Well, so we have to see it to believe it. And the Cubs have kind of done that to themselves a little bit over the course of the last few years. So I'm going to preface that. I know there's a lot of cynicism right now in Cubs free and kind of Cub land, Cubs social media, Reddit, Northside Baseball. Doesn't matter where you go, there's a little bit of cynicism. I think some of that cynicism should be probably kind of erased by this trade, but I know that there's going to be a contingency of fans that say they just did this because he's cheap. They're not going to spend any money. So I want to kind of address the elephant in the room, that we do have to see it to believe it, and that I don't want to give them necessarily any direct benefits of the doubt. But over the last few days, we've been seeing their names come up with checking in on Cody Bellinger, with talking in the mix of Alex Bregman again, who we know or at least believe that he's got a 5-year, $160 million deal on the table. We've seen them connected to Bo Bichette. We haven't seen him connected to Kyle Tucker, but I mean, what's his market right now? It doesn't seem like it's bustling. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Cubs maybe re-engage there in some level.
Circle back at least.
Maybe circle back at least.
Yeah.
But I think what's important to look at is that the team seems to have also been connected to people like Pete Alonso earlier in the offseason. And these are not cheap. These are not cheap players. And we can say that the Cubs aren't interested in big contracts. And that's fine. I don't think that they're going to sign a 10-year contract this offseason. Never say never, but I don't think so. On the flip side, they're not delusional. They don't live in fantasy land where these guys aren't going to cost 30, 25, 27, $30 million a year on value. I don't think it's also surprising that when Tetsuya Imai and Michael King, 2 starting pitchers who I think hit a lot of the markers that the Cubs like, arm slots, stuff that they throw, all of those things, that when they wanted opt-outs in 2026 and to go with high average annual value as opposed to low money spread over years, that the Cubs bowed out basically on both of them. They told both of them no. And what do? They immediately turn around, they trade for Edward Cabrera, and there's a pile of money there. And I think they're telling you what they'd like to do. They would like one of those 4 players. I don't know if they have the appetite to do so. But if we start playing some musical chairs here, the Yankees seem like a really good fit for Bellinger. They've got the ballpark for him. He's just been playing there. All the noise has been Bellinger. So check mark there. The Blue Jays keep getting connected to Kyle Tucker. They want to spend money. They've spent money. They're not scared of spending money. So Tucker goes there. Who's given big contracts to Bregman? Where was he just? The Red Sox. So now you've got Bo Bichette, who's sitting out here. Where's his chair? Where's he going? He's a great baseball player, but what's his market right now? The Mets were just said that they're probably going to get one of the big starting pitchers, Framber Valdez or Ranger Suarez. That's what they said. So again, where's the musical chair for Bo Bichette right now? And I think when you look at it, I think he fits the Cubs market. He fits that age range that the Cubs might spend 7 years on. Dansby Swanson was around the same age as this player. I think he makes a lot of contact. The Cubs like contact-oriented hitters versus guys who strike out a lot. Kyle Tucker was one of those as well that they traded for. I won't sit here and tell you that they're going to sign Bo Bichette, but when I'm playing musical chairs and I'm looking at the money and I'm looking at what they could use right now, Bo Bichette feels like that fits like a category. I mean, Alex Bregman still fits that category. Cody Bellinger could fit that category. Kyle Tucker could fit that category on certain areas. I think that they cycle around to one of these 4 guys, and I don't think that they're going to jump the market and sign him over the weekend necessarily. But I also think that the Cubs have picked a lane now, and they picked a lane, and they're going to kind of have to live with it. We saw last year that they kind of tried to. They waited a little too long on Bregman. They waited a little too long on Tanner Scott, and they were left kind of holding the bag at the end. Could the Cubs do that again this year, where they wait this out until like late January and they're left with nothing? Yeah, I could see that. But I also could see them, maybe learning a little bit of a lesson there. They've made a decision. I think they got to go with something, and they're kind of screaming for a hitter right now. And if you want to read some tea leaves, they just traded one of their better middle infield prospects. They've got a couple of infielders here. So we'll see, but I feel like hitter is on the table. I think if they wanted a mid-tier hitter, they would have gone with Okamoto, and they weren't really in that very much. It sounds like they were kind of on the periphery at best, and they didn't go that route. So you're kind of left at this place where it's like, well, maybe if they sign like a really cheap hitter, yeah, maybe they're just trying to save money. Maybe they are being cheap, but there's a lot of money left. They've been specifically very cheap on things. Very cheap on Tyler Austin, very cheap on a lot of their bullpen players. They spent $30 million combined on the bullpen, but each player very cheap, and they chose not to go with like a Devin Williams or something like that that's going to spend more money. And I don't know. It feels like it's lining up that the Cubs want one of those 4 hitters. We'll see. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's my vision on it.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you on that. I'll finish with this. Just one more question. Let's say it is Bo Bichette. Let's do the what if game, and the Cubs get Bo Bichette. Does that immediately mean, Nico Horner's probably going to get traded, or is there a world that exists where you sign Bo Bichette, you bring him in, and you also keep the rest of that infield intact? If so, what does that look like?
I think they keep Nico Horner. Taking a step back, I think the first question we have to ask is, where the hell would you trade Nico Horner, and what are you getting back for him? I like Nico Horner a lot, but I think to the Cubs as a 4-win second baseman, he has far more value than whatever it is they trade him for. I mean, what are you getting for 1 year of a 4-win second baseman who's not a power guy? Like, our team's really going to line up for him? They don't need a pitcher now. They've got plenty of starting pitching. They don't need bullpen. I think they've got plenty of bullpen arms. Are they going to trade Nico Horner for prospects? I don't think so. Who's given up a lot of prospects for a 1-year hitter at this point? I think value-wise, it's a really narrow landing strip for finding like a Nico Horner trade that makes sense. I know teams have been checking in on him, and I think the Cubs believe, well, we could trade anybody, but at the same time, I don't see a trade there. I think Bo Bichette fits a lot. You've got players like Pete Crow Armstrong, Michael Busch, Moises Ballesteros is probably going to be your DH right now, who all look like they need somebody sometimes to hit lefties for them. You've got Tyler Austin, who can play some corner outfield, who can play first base, who could hit DH. You've got Kevin Alcantara, who can play some outfield, specifically center field. He's a right-handed hitter. Well, what if you bring in Bregman or you bring in Bichette? Matt Shaw hits lefties pretty well. That's a right-handed hitter against them. Bo Bichette's not a great defensive player. I don't think he's going to be a great defensive third baseman. I think he'll be probably a better defensive second baseman. Like, I don't know, 2027 when Nico Horner leaves as a free agent. You've got Matt Shaw, who's just a phenomenal bench position at that point. He's your Ben Zobrist at that point, essentially. He's playing third base. He's playing some shortstop. He's playing some second base. He can play those positions. Now you've got a great super sub behind him. You have Matt Shaw, Bichette, Nico Horner, who can all hit against left-handed pitching. You've got Tyler Austin, Kevin Alcantara, who can come in. So you can start to see this like kind of flexible offense and flexible team that can like handle injuries in multiple positions, that can handle right-handed and left-handed platoon splits way better than they did last year. And I'll say this right now: if the Cubs get Bichette, and they've gotten Cabrera for what they did, this is an A+ offseason for me, like A+. A++++. They might not even be any better than they were last year, but if they stay as good as
that was shown, though, like the aggressiveness,
but they got younger.
Trade Cabrera and then get another bat like that. Yeah, I would.
On top of that, they're just as good, but they're younger.
Yeah.
Like, how is that a bad thing? That is a good thing. If you get better and get younger at the same, if you get, even if it's just a slight bit better,
yeah,
that's an A+. So listen, we'll see what they do with Bichette. We'll see what they do with Bregman. I think they want a hitter. I don't know. I'm happy with the Cabrera trade in a vacuum. Let's see where we go from here, but I'm feeling pretty good about it.
I agree with you. Anything else you wanted to wrap up on? I'm all set. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch base on, but
nothing here. The Jacob Webb signing is probably a really nice little underrated relief pitcher thing over Christmas. Keep an eye on him. I think he's going to be better than people think he is. Just diving into his stuff, I think he was a sneaky little pickup. The Cubs have done a good job in the bullpen, so I'm actually really excited for the Cubs pitching staff. I know that there's no sexy name in the bullpen, but I think it's a really deep bullpen right now. I think they've got a lot of arms,
deep rotation now too. Deep rotation, deep bullpen.
Justin Steele coming back in midseason too. There's a real good chance that in the playoffs, the Cubs are Edward Cabrera, Matthew Boyd, Justin Steele, Cade Horton as some form of their four, and compare and contrast that to what they were going with last year, where Colin Ray is starting game is as a pitcher, where you've got Drew Pomeranz starting your basically your elimination games. Yeah, it's a big upgrade. I like where we're at right now.
Couldn't agree more. Cubs trade for Edward Cabrera. We'll see what's next. We always appreciate anyone who tunes in. Click the subscribe button if you're watching via the YouTube channel as we build it up. He is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Widmeyer. This has been another edition of the Northside Baseball Podcast.